March 18, 2021. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, a major drug trafficking group, did something brutal that caught everyone's attention. Mexican police found a body wrapped in plastic with a message on the chest saying, "The traitor El Cholo." This was a big deal because El Cholo had left the powerful CJNG cartel to start his gang. Here's a look at some other times gangs messed with the wrong cartels. Number 5. The Acapulco Massacre. January 8, 2011 was a truly terrifying day in Acapulco, a popular tourist spot. Imagine walking by a shopping center and seeing 15 men's bodies left there. Each body had a note, and it was clear that these were the messages from El Chapo's gang. These men used to be part of the South Pacific gang, which had broken away from another weakening cartel, the Beltran Leyva. They were targeted because they were in the way of the Sinaloa cartel led by El Chapo, who wanted to control Acapulco and its drug routes. At first, the South Pacific gang was pretty strong in Acapulco, even using a 12-year-old as a gunman, but they didn't last long. In just a year, they were mostly wiped out, caught or killed because they stood up to the Sinaloa cartel, one of the toughest and most ruthless drug cartels out there. El Chapo and his partner, El Mayo Zambada, have been big names in the drug world since the late 80s. They've fought with other gangs and even stood up to the Mexican government. Their operations stretch globally, and they've been very smart about sneaking drugs across borders, using things like tunnels under the US-Mexico border. El Chapo, in particular, became infamous not just for his role in the cartel, but for breaking out of prison twice. It wasn't until he was finally caught and brought to the US that people saw the extent of the cartel's ruthlessness. In 2019, during El Chapo's trial in the US, things got intense. A former bodyguard, Isais Valdez Rios, took the stand to testify against him. He told everyone how El Chapo was brutally harsh, especially to those who betrayed him. He shared a horrific story about how El Chapo beat 3 guys who left his cartel for another. Rios said they were beaten so badly they looked like rag dolls, barely able to move as El Chapo kept hitting them. The story got even darker. Near a big bonfire, El Chapo shot each of these men in the head and then threw their bodies into the fire, making sure they were completely burned up. It was a grim demonstration of how far the Sinaloa cartel would go to keep their power, totally ignoring any legal or moral limits. Number 4. La Familia Michoacana. December 8, 2023. The people of Texcaltitlan, a town southwest of Mexico City, had enough of the ruthless cartel terrorizing them. Armed with strong determination and any weapons they could find, these folks were ready for a serious showdown, even though they knew it could lead to a dangerous response from the cartel. The troublemakers were from La Familia Michoacana, a cartel that everyone in the village feared because they were forcing everyone to pay a huge amount of money for every month of protection. This was tough on the villagers, especially the farmers who were already struggling. Then one December morning, the cartel decided to double the amount they were demanding. That was the last straw. One farmer said it was either fight back or starve. The face-off happened at the local soccer field. The cartel members, some even dressed in fake military uniforms, showed up expecting to collect their money like usual, but they walked into a surprise. The villagers, armed with shotguns, machetes, and pure guts, met them there. The tension was thick, and suddenly a gunshot broke the silence. What followed was a quick and fierce fight. When everything settled, the outcome was tragic. 14 people were dead, including 4 brave farmers and 10 cartel members. Among those cartel guys was Comandante Payaso, or Commander Clown, a notorious leader responsible for the hike in the protection money. After the fight, the farmers didn't just walk away. They set the cartel's trucks and the bodies of the fallen cartel members on fire. The fires lit up the night sky, showing their anger and protest. Amidst all this, one villager spoke up about how they had asked the Mexican army for help because they couldn't keep paying the cartel, but no help came. The situation quickly became a hot topic politically, especially with the presidential election coming up. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador blamed past governments and societal issues for the increase in drug-related violence, suggesting that kindness rather than conflict could solve things. On the other hand, presidential candidate Xochitl Galvez criticized his hugs, not bullets strategy as ineffective, arguing it left rural folks to defend themselves. The government didn't charge the villagers with any crimes, seeing their actions as self-defense. But the story took a darker turn later on. On December 27th, the cartel struck back hard. They invaded the village at night and kidnapped 14 people. including 3 policemen and a wounded villager from a hospital. The chief prosecutor of the state of Mexico, José Luis Cervantes, confirmed this scary situation not far from Mexico City. There were no ransom demands, which was odd because the state had first thought these were just disappearances. Defiantly, people from the targeted village and a nearby one said the cartel had made demands: hand over the leaders of a recent revolt or say goodbye to the kidnapped people. The villagers didn't give in, and everything went silent about what happened to those taken. That silence broke on January 16, 2024, when police got an anonymous tip and made a startling find behind a chapel in Zinacantepec. They discovered 7 of the missing people, including 3 women and 4 kids, unharmed and waiting to be rescued. It makes you wonder, did the cartel suddenly feel bad for these women and children? Given how brutal these gangs are, that seems unlikely. As for the other 7 who are still missing, no one knows where they are or what they're going through. It's chilling to think about the kind of harsh treatment they might be facing for standing up to the cartel. Number 3. El Maro. January 11, 2020, Karam Lisbeth Yepes Ortiz was living what should have been one of the happiest days of her life. Dressed in her wedding gown, she was all smiles as she walked down the aisle, unaware of the horror that was about to strike. Her groom, known as El Calmadaro, was deeply entangled in the narcotics trade. As they exchanged vows, their celebration was shattered by gunmen who stormed the church, killing Karam and abducting her husband. Karam was not an outsider to the criminal underworld. Her brother was a notorious gang leader, and her family had significant ties to the drug trade. These connections made her a target for the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG, a ruthless and fast-rising cartel known for its barbarity. Both the Mexican government and the U.S. Department of Justice recognized them as a major threat. The CJNG emerged in 2009, led by Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho. A former policeman and U.S. convict, El Mencho returned to Mexico, escalated the criminal ladder, and established him as a formidable cartel leader, with the U.S. placing a $10 million bounty on him. El Mencho reveals the chaos and cruelty, elevating it to a grim spectacle. For over a decade, the CJNG, along with its elite group, has terrorized Mexico with unspeakable acts, including mass murders, acid baths, decapitations, and the consummation of human flesh by new recruits. Their heinous activities include public displays of tortured bodies and the horrific use of explosives to murder a father and son, a spectacle they recorded for pleasure. They even accidentally killed a young girl, mistaking her for a rival's daughter. Amid this terror stood José Antonio Yepes Ortiz, better known as El Maro, leader of the Santa Rosa de Lima gang, which engaged in pipeline fuel theft in Guanajuato. His defiance ignited a brutal feud with the CJNG. At one point, El Maro boldly challenged the Mexican president with a threatening banner, although he later denied it, blaming El Mencho for the provocation. El Mencho responded aggressively, vowing to dismantle El Maro's operations and seize his territories. His aggressive tactics included an attack on what was mistakenly believed to be El Maro's sister's wedding, which led to El Maro's temporary disappearance. However, on August 2, 2020, El Maro was apprehended in a significant operation by local and national security forces, signaling a potential end to his gang's reign. Yet, a twist emerged in January 2024 when a photo suggested that Karam, El Maro's sister, might be alive and leading Santa Rosa de Lima. She was rumored to be orchestrating violent acts, including police confrontation and a deadly massacre during a holiday party in Salvatierra. These rumors suggest Karam might have staged her death to escape CJNG's vengeance, leaving a shroud of mystery and fear over Guanajuato as the conflict with the relentless CJNG continues. Number 2. Dirty Cops. November 18, 2023. A group of local and state police officers in Tijuana came up with a bold plan. They didn't plan to seize a drug shipment. They planned to steal it from a trafficker's warehouse. Yep, these cops turned into criminals themselves, and they decided to steal from no one other than the mighty Sinaloa cartel. Even though the famous cartel leader El Chapo is locked up tight in ADX Florence, his cartel is still causing chaos, led by his sons, Los Chapitos, and his longtime buddy El Mayo Zambada. The reaction to the theft was fast and fierce. Just hours later, the federal prosecutor's office in Tijuana was sprayed with bullets, a clear message from the cartel, and it didn't stop there. A local police officer linked to the robbery was gunned down right in the streets of Tijuana, an execution that the cartel seemed to take credit for almost right away. The violence just kept rising. On November 24th, the state prosecutor's office was shot up, but luckily no one was hurt. Then a few days later, a state detective involved in the drug heist was killed at a gas station. He tried to escape in his car but ended up crashing and was shot by guys on a motorcycle. As it turns out, 2 more officers who were part of the heist were executed in the middle of the day on city streets. One of them had even turned down a chance to get protection in exchange for testifying. Alberto Campella, the former chief of Tijuana's police, mentioned that 3 more officers have been killed since the heist. It shows how relentless the Sinaloa cartel is in getting back at anyone who crosses them. This ongoing battle between the cartel and Mexican authorities came into the spotlight on October 17, 2019, when they briefly caught Ovidio Guzman Lopez, leading to massive fights in Culiacan and his eventual release after threats of even more violence. But that freedom didn't last long. Jump to 2023, and Ovidio's luck has run out again. He was caught and sent off to the United States, now facing a pretty bleak future in ADX Florence, where he might end up isolated just like his dad. Despite losing Ovidio, the cartel, now run by his brothers Ivan Archivaldo and Jesus Alfredo, keeps up their brutal activities. These guys are still on the loose, both with US and Mexican authorities on their trail for everything from drug trafficking to outright murder. The Chapitos are not just about drugs. They're innovating in some seriously scary ways, bringing new dangers to the streets. Get this, the US Justice Department has revealed some gruesome details about how they keep their power. We're talking about torture tactics like using corkscrews, electrocuting people, and even scalding them with hot chili. Some unlucky enemies even up as food for tigers, a real-life horror story. Number 1. El Cholo. March 18, 2021. Something eerie happened in a peaceful park in Guadalajara, Mexico. What looked like just some black garbage bags turns out to be a man's body. The police initially thought it was a dummy because of how it was wrapped up, but they got a shocking surprise. It was the body of Carlos Enrique Sanchez Martinez, better known as El Cholo, a notorious gangster who had once caused fear across the nation. The way they confirmed it was El Cholo was straight out of a horror movie. His body had 2 signs stuck into it with kitchen knives, marking him clearly. But who this guy was really, and what led to such a gruesome end? El Cholo used to be a key player in the CJNG cartel, but he got too ambitious. He betrayed El Mencho, the big boss of the cartel, and started his group with help from their rivals, the Sinaloa cartel. El Cholo's bold move set him up for disaster. His new gang got into fierce battles with his old group over territories, and it was brutal. Think about it. Knowing how ruthless El Mencho and the CJNG were, would you ever think of turning against them? Yes, that's what El Cholo did, and it cost him his life. On that day in March, the internet was buzzing with a chilling video. In it, El Cholo, wearing a red Lacoste shirt, looked totally defeated as he sat in front of some masked guys who were about to execute him. He admitted to a lot of crimes, including an attack on the US consulate, and even named some high-ranking police officials as involved, including Omar Garcia Harfuch. Harfuch is known for his tough actions against the cartels and had even survived an assassination attempt by the CJNG before, a clear sign of how intense the battle with organized crime was. Even though some CJNG members were caught after they tried to kill Harfuch, El Mencho was still out there, continuing his path of revenge and violence. As the situation heated up, a video popped up that threw accusations against Harfuch, and it got a lot of people talking. Harfuch hit back with a tweet, brushing off what he called the desperate words of a cornered criminal. He was convinced that the people behind the smear campaign were connected to the CJNG. Meanwhile, in the same video, El Cholo made a heartfelt plea to his gang to quit the criminal life and focus on their families, ending with a sad reflection of his own fate, saying, "Look how I ended." The story took a dark turn not long after the video came out. A body was found on a park bench, wrapped in plastic and shot multiple times in the head, a clear sign of a brutal end. There was a blood-stained note pinned to his chest saying, "The traitor El Cholo." This ghastly marker let the authorities identify him even before he was officially checked in at the morgue, closing a chapter of betrayal and revenge in a really tragic way.